Hello, GSummit. It's really good to be here. How are you all doing? Yeah. How many people want to hear something about collaborative game design? Yeah, my favorite topic. I'm thrilled to be here sharing my personal journey through game design with you, giving you some very practical, actionable tips you can use tomorrow, and getting you to see what's happening behind the scenes of the co-op revolution. Okay, the clicker doesn't go forward. There we go. But first, a little Game Theory 101. What is a game? We could argue all day. Here's one definition. I've used this in a textbook when I've taught game design. This is a pretty standard definition that actually defines one kind of game, zero-sum games. Those are games where you're opponents. There's a limited pie to divide up among the winners. I win and you lose. So head-to-head battles, rank order competitions of all kinds, any war simulation, polo, chess, most gambling games, all zero-sum games. Many of them great fun games. There's another kind of game. I ran into this as I worked in the games industry. The biggest hits I worked on, Rock Band, The Sims, didn't fall in this description at all. They didn't have a clear end state and a clear win state with winners and losers. They were much more about having fun together. So I came up with a looser definition of games that was describing, turns out, non-zero-sum games. Those are games where rather than being opponents, we are framed as partners. We win together, we lose together. So girls playing double dutch, Pictionary if you're partners, martial arts as it's practiced with lots of support and people moving forward together, a charity walk. These are all examples of everyday non-zero-sum games. So what? Why should you care? Well, because the world is changing, new opportunities are opening up, and there's three disruptive trends in particular that's shaking up the games industry and the broader digital landscape. The first is ubiquitous connected devices. Platforms are being disrupted in a big way. Used to be consoles and handheld consoles were where it's at. No more. This year, PC revenue surpassed console in gaming. Even more damning to the poor consoles, all the growth, you can look at this chart, every place where there's growth is general purpose devices, most of them mobile. Platform is changing. Second trend is audience disruption. It's now a mainstream all ages audience. It is not a boys club anymore if you're making games. Some interesting stats. Older folks are figuring out how to get online and get access to games. Young kids are growing up playing online games, 93% of them, according to a recent survey. The third trend is mutual entertainment or user-generated content. And this is a big disruption if you are an industry that makes carefully crafted content for people. What we're seeing is that's being disrupted too. This Nielsen survey really makes it stark. Gaming's way up there in hours spent online. It's dwarfed by social networking and blogging, which is all mutual entertainment. Who knows what this is? What is it? That's right. Minecraft is the little indie game that could. It's a huge worldwide hit. It's shaking up the games industry. It doesn't have any leaderboards or points or tutorials or all the things we've come to think a game has to have. But it's all about people entertaining each other by building cool things. So what's a game designer to do in the shifting landscape? What is anybody working on the edges of gaming, as you all are, to do? That's where knowing about what's happening on the fringes of gaming and in the broader world with the co-op revolution is so valuable, because that's where the blue ocean opportunities are. Think about all the ways people can win together. Well, if you like killing, you can battle zombie hordes together. Left 4 Dead's 4-player co-op was fantastic co-op model. This is Castle Crashers, great model of the RPG mechanics, fighting and healing together. In Portal 2 and many other games, players can solve puzzles together. In Journey, players could explore ancient runes together and get better powers by being close to each other and helping each other. In Rock Band, of course, and other games like it, you can make music together. In Dance Central and other games like it, you can dance together and get that thrill of coordinated movements. Minecraft lets you build virtual buildings and cities together with other people. In Foldit, teams self-organize to solve the really tough problems. They solve real-world science problems together. Kickstarter, which is a platform for co-op gaming, lets people get together and fund a game. It lets people do something they couldn't do themselves. This is Team Fortress 2. How many of you have played Team Fortress 2? How many of you have bought a hat? Okay. Let me just give you a taste. In the first week of this year, $400,000, the first week, was paid out to player content creators. They've created a whole economy that wraps around a game where players are actually making a living creating cool hats for each other. The co-op revolution is here, but it's not evenly distributed. What I'm going to show you is a really whirlwind tour of some of the really innovative and influential things that are happening, and then give you some practical tips to go home and try it yourself. First is, think about competing with the system, not with other players. That might sound really obvious. Turns out it's not. You actually have to invent a system for people to compete with. For instance, in Foldit, players are competing with a system that actually knows how a protein will fold for real. And if they can solve that, they will level up. In Minecraft survival mode, which is a brilliant move, you have to figure out how to create a structure to survive the night. It doesn't have a tutorial, but built into the game is the competition with the system that teaches you what you need to know. In Kickstarter, people band together around a project, such as the Reading Rainbow project, which had a huge explosive response, to compete with the system. If the project doesn't get funded, they get no money. So you actually have a real hand with crowdfunding to make a difference and get a project funded. Another key thing, shared outcomes. Just as we saw in the Kickstarter Reading Rainbow, people win together or lose together, the hallmark of co-op gaming. In Portal 2, how many of you have played Portal 2? Awesome game. They created two-player co-op where you needed the other person in order to solve the puzzle and move through the game. Your outcomes were tied. Here's another example, the shared score in Dance Central. A lot of people said, look at that. You can't tell who's doing better. The two people have a shared score. What's wrong with that game? Exactly. The two people have a shared score. It doesn't matter who did better or not. What matters is how the team did. Shared outcome. This is the team of people in Foldit that actually solved an HIV monkey virus problem that had stumped scientists for 10 years. They couldn't do it alone. They had an emergent team. They figured it out. They banded together. And they actually got the outcome that no one thought they could actually get. Interdependent roles. A lot of gamification will have everybody doing the same thing all the time, like, say, a loyalty program, which is fine for what it is. But if you want to go beyond that and you want to do co-op, think about ways people need each other. Think about constraints, how you can limit roles and make them need each other. Think about emergent roles where people can actually play a role in the community, like that team in Foldit you didn't expect. So some obvious examples, but they're great, are Rock Band was completely based on the interdependent game of drums, bass, guitar, and vocals. You all need each other to sound like a band. In every RPG, there's versions of fighters and healers. They mix it up with different roles and classes. Fighters and healers need each other. The fighters deal with the monsters. The healers get those fighters back up on their feet. League of Legends. How many of you play League of Legends? Yeah. So a lot of very toxic behavior early on led to the company letting players become judges and enforcers in the overall community, kind of like a first line of attack with customer support. And it's actually a role that once you've become a trusted player, and I'll show you more about that later, you can actually make a difference and decide who can stay and what punishment they need for their behavior. Another emergent role you see is writers and editors in many sites. This is from Stack Overflow. The idea that there's people writing things and sometimes you need to decide what's okay and what's not. It's the job of an editor. People can level up into being editor roles. Writers and editors need each other. They're all part of the ecosystem. Interdependent roles. Fourth rule is what I call co-op social gestures. So people love social gestures. They love dancing together and doing the same thing together. And some social gestures, like, cheering over your fallen opponent, is not very co-op. Other social gestures, such as mutual recharging in Journey, is very much a co-op game mechanic. In Journey, if you run into somebody, it's anonymous, and you're near each other and help each other, your energy for both of you recharges. But it only happens when you work together. In Dance Central and Just Dance, the coordinated movements in multiplayer mode is completely addictive and powerful, especially for young girls. That feeling of dancing together and the game making it easy for you to look cool. In Portal 2, the two-player co-op, you could do a high five or a hug once you'd solved a particularly difficult puzzle. That's a co-op gesture. In League of Legends, part of the way they figure out who's a good sportsmanship and has good teamwork is they implemented a system where at the end of a match, you could this thing pops up and says, did that person, act nobly and nicely and with good teamwork? If so, you can give them kudos, which is a very different vibe. It's positive reinforcement for good behavior versus what's mostly done in gaming, which is banning bad behavior and just letting people run free. So League of Legends is doing a lot of really innovative things, very much worth watching. Shared resources. This is similar to shared outcomes, but sometimes, for instance, there isn't shared outcomes. For instance, in The Sims, there aren't really outcomes per se. It's a different kind of game. Think about ways you could let people share resources to develop that co-op feeling. Minecraft is a great example. The whole environment is a shared resource. It's a shared mutable environment. Part of why Minecraft is used in schools and it's taken off and little kids can figure it out is the joy of that with a set of simple rules that you can learn and then experiment with. In Journey, you get these shared superpowers I was mentioning, but only if you work together. Skylanders. How many of you have kids who play Skylanders? So this is interesting. Their action figures are remixable. So if your friend comes over and they've got action figures you don't have, the tops and bottoms remix, brand new characters appear on the screen for you to play. That's co-op. Non-zero stats and spotlights. So a familiar example is community stats. And when I start working with new clients, this is often one of the first things we talk about. They say, we want people to feel a sense of community. We want them to feel like they belong together. So you can have individual stats. People love to see themselves getting better. We all know that. You can show community stats, how the community is getting better. How many of you ever played Nobi Nobi? Okay, really awesome game, really weird game. They did this crazy thing, and I just want to share with you because it was so inspiring, where they had this long snake that represented the collective total hours played of all the players. And then they started releasing updates. The snake has reached the moon. The snake has reached Mars. Can it reach Jupiter? Keep playing. That was their collective achievement mechanic. Topical spotlights. So a lot of people say, well, I understand leaderboards can backfire and they've got problems and maybe I don't want to use them, but what can I use? Spotlights. Spotlights are not leaderboards. They don't have an ordinal ranking like I showed you in zero-sum mechanics. Kickstarter is a great example. They have spotlights from the various categories that they have run on their homepage. It's not, you could think of it as a one-item leaderboard. It changes often. I've written a lot about this on my blog, about the mechanics of implementing a good spotlight system, but that's a great way to get people feeling more a sense of belonging and less that sense of, you're ahead of me, you're behind me. Clan emblems. These are basically badges earned by groups rather than individuals. If you do have a badge system and that's working for you, that's great. Think about collective badges, group badges, things that can only be unlocked when people work together as a group or a team. In Castle Crashers, they had this awesome achievement. This is an example of that, called the Medic Achievement. And you had to play 4-player co-op, and everyone else in your party had to die at least once, and you revived them, and boom, you get a new achievement. You're the medic, earned through battle. And the last one is have some strategy for user-generated content. Whether it's a YouTube channel that's promoting what you're doing or whatever, really think about how you can engage people entertaining each other in some fashion and make that a core part of what you're doing. If you look at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, these are variable ratio, pattern, addictive streams of bite-sized content. That's a great example. It's all user-generated content. Minecraft, all user-generated content. It does have randomly generated worlds that are interesting starters, so there's craft there. This is from Team Fortress 2. The player-created items dramatically extended the fun of the game. It was win-win for everybody. On Kickstarter, all the content is created by the players. The people who create videos give you hours and hours of creative entertainment. They've created all that content. All of these co-op gaming systems are leveraging user-generated content. So this is a very personal topic to me, as well as my professional focus and endless fascination. When I was very young, my first love was music. I would pick out tunes on the piano when I was a little girl. I just couldn't stay away. I loved it. So my parents got me piano lessons, and I was really good. And then there was competitions, and I was good at that. And then there was statewide competitions. And then I came in second. And then I just lost my love of music. That's not why I loved music. That's not what I wanted to do. And I stopped playing the piano for years. And one day, I took up guitar, and I could play a few chords. I was on a beach in Greece, and I met some people around the campfire who didn't speak my language. And they had drums, and I had a guitar. And we had an all-night jam session, and we didn't say a word. And it was one of the most pivotal experiences of my life. And I reignited my love of music. I started playing guitar, and I started playing in bands, which are very much a non-zero-sum co-op experience. That was my path into happiness and passion that I had had as a child. And it also ended up being my way to open up my gaming skills into a broader blue ocean opportunity. So if there's one thing I'd like you to take from this, it's that not every person is motivated by zero-sum emotions. The emotions that come from zero-sum mechanics, like competing and getting revenge and lording your victories, and those are fine and they're great in certain circumstances. But they're not always going to get the results, particularly with the trends that I shared with you earlier, the broader audience, equal men and women in the audience to address, having mutually generated content to entertain each other, having everybody on these ubiquitous platforms. The world is different, and the real blue ocean opportunity is in co-op gaming. There's many forms that are left to be invented. I think games matter because they shape how we see the world, and that includes what you guys are doing. So how will you choose to seize this opportunity? On your next project, just try it. Just think co-op first when you go into your design meeting and see what happens. So I want to give a shout out to the people that influenced this talk and these thoughts. These are some of my co-conspirators. You can follow any of them on Twitter. They're all awesome. I am currently working on a 10-week class for startups in September. So if any of you are running startups and want to get your MVP in shape with great product design, check out my website, amyjokim.com. I also do game design and workshops on co-op design that goes much, much deeper into the actual mechanics of how you do it and the various forms. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I hope some of you go off and build some things that none of us have ever seen yet. Thank you. And I see I have some time remaining. Can we do Q&A, or are we done? Q&A? Would anyone like to yell out a question? Does anyone have a burning question? All right then, thank you.